My name is Grace Whitaker, and I'm 35 years old. I live in a two-story brick home on a quiet street in Charleston, South Carolina, the kind with front porches, jasmine growing up the railing, and neighbors who wave from their driveways. I'm an interior designer, running a modest but thriving home styling business. My husband, Daniel, is a respected real estate broker with a smile that melts walls and closes deals. Together, we looked like the kind of couple people envy, and maybe, for a while, we were. Every morning felt like a scene from a calm, predictable life. I'd sip my coffee at the kitchen island, flipping through fabric samples while Daniel scrolled the news on his phone. He'd kiss me on the cheek before heading off to work, always with the same line, "See you tonight, Gracie." He called me that when he was feeling warm, Gracie. It made me feel like I was still the girl he'd fallen in love with all those years ago, back when we were still broke, still dreaming big together. We didn't have children, not by choice or neglect, it just hadn't happened yet. At some point, we stopped talking about it, but the silence didn't hurt. Not then, anyway. We filled our lives with weekend getaways, home projects, and long dinners with friends. And when we were alone, we'd talk about remodeling the guest room into a library, or maybe a yoga space. There was something peaceful about the rhythm we'd built, comfortable, familiar, safe. That morning, the sunlight poured through the kitchen, windows like honey. I remember thinking, this is it. This is what contentment feels like. Daniel had made an extra effort that week, brought home flowers, took me to a rooftop restaurant on Tuesday just because, and even made breakfast on Thursday. We were a month away from our 10th anniversary, and I was already planning a surprise trip to Asheville. If there were cracks forming in our life, they were quiet, small enough to ignore. The truth is, I didn't feel unhappy. Not really. I felt, still, settled, like someone who'd climbed the mountain and built a lovely little home at the top. I had no idea that somewhere, just out of view, the storm was already building. I remember Daniel pausing at the door that morning. He looked at me differently, softer, maybe. "You're beautiful, you know that," he said. I laughed. "And you're fishing for something?" "No, really," he replied, then grinned. "Don't forget I've got that showing at 3. Might be home late." "Okay," I said, brushing his collar. "Don't sell the city without me." He kissed me again, longer this time. I watched him drive away, not knowing that the moment he turned the corner, he was headed towards something or someone he thought I'd never find out about. But I did, and when I did, everything changed. It started with something small, an offhand detail that should have meant nothing. Daniel's cologne. He always wore the same scent. It was subtle and clean, like cedar wood with a hint of citrus. I used to bury my face in his shirts just to smell it. But that Friday evening, when he walked through the door, the scent was different, sharper, overpowering, like something you'd spray on before a date you weren't supposed to be on. I didn't say anything. I told myself not to spiral. It's probably just a sample cologne from the office, I thought. A new client, a new listing, a new. Then came the second thing. The shower. Daniel always showered in the morning, never at night. But that day, he walked in, muttered something about being sticky from the heat, and headed straight to the bathroom. I sat there on the couch, frozen, listening to the water run and run and run. It wasn't just a rinse. It was the kind of shower you take when you're trying to wash off guilt. I remember clenching my wine glass so tightly I thought it would crack. "Don't overthink, Grace," that's what I told myself. But deep down, something colder than reason started to grow in my chest. Later that night, I pretended to be asleep while he scrolled on his phone beside me. His fingers tapped the screen quickly, like he was trying to say a lot in a little time. I could hear the tiny vibrations of incoming messages, 3 in a row. No notifications popped up. Just the screen lighting up and fading again. He turned slightly, glanced over at me, then slid the phone under his pillow. I didn't move, but my heart did. The next morning, Daniel left early for a team meeting. I waited 20 minutes after the garage door closed before I got up and grabbed his pillow. The phone was gone. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't imagining things. Something was happening. But still, I wasn't prepared for what came next. That afternoon, I received a message on my work phone, an unfamiliar number, no name. The preview read, "He says you don't make him feel like a man. Want to see what does?" My entire body tensed. I hesitated before tapping it open. There it was, A photo, a woman in my husband's favorite shirt, my husband's shirt smirking at the camera, like she'd already won. The message beneath it was cruel in its simplicity. Oops, wrong wife. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just stood there, staring at the screen, wondering how long I'd been sleeping next to a stranger, and worse, how long he'd been waking up beside me, while his heart was already somewhere else. That night, I said nothing. I laid next to Daniel, like usual, silent and still. Even as my soul cracked a little deeper, he thought he had the upper hand. He thought I'd never know. But I did. And now, I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. I didn't confront him, not yet. That would have been too easy. Daniel needed to think I was still in the dark. He needed to believe I was the same Grace who folded his laundry and trusted his late-night work calls. Because the moment he saw my silence as weakness, I could turn it into power. The next morning, I slipped into my role like it was armor. I made coffee. I packed him a lunch. I smiled as he left for work, planting a soft kiss on his cheek like always. But the second the door shut, I raced upstairs and grabbed my laptop. The number that texted me the photo was blocked, but I wasn't clueless. I'd worked with enough clients in Charleston's upper circles to know how to find what wasn't meant to be found. 10 minutes of image tracing, and I had a lead. The photo had been taken inside a penthouse suite at the Grand Heston Hotel just 20 minutes from our house. I called the front desk, pretending to be a planner confirming an event. "Hi, I'm following up on a private reservation from last weekend," I said smoothly. "The Monroe party." There was a pause on the line. Then the receptionist replied, "Yes, Miss Ava Monroe had a weekend booking under that name." Ava. Her name felt like a splinter. Small, sharp, dangerous. I searched her on social media. Her profiles were public. Of course. Girls like Ava didn't hide. They flaunted. I scrolled through filtered selfies, designer handbags, and mirror pics taken in the very same shirt Daniel wore to bed. My stomach turned. She was beautiful, younger, confident, the kind of woman who didn't second-guess her reflection or ask for permission. But I wasn't intimidated. No, not anymore. I was something she could never be. His wife. That night I watched Daniel like he was a movie I'd seen before, trying to catch all the parts I'd missed. He told me he was tired, said he had back-to-back showings the next day and might be home late again. I nodded, pretended not to notice how he kept his phone face down, and how he flinched every time it buzzed. But then he slipped. "I'll be out on James Island most of the day," he said, pouring a glass of wine. Showing a duplex to a new couple. Except earlier, I'd seen an email from his office saying he didn't have any showings scheduled at all. My chest tightened. I sipped my water. "Sounds exciting. Do you want me to pack you something for lunch?" He blinked. "Noah, they're treating me." Client lunch. Another lie. It was almost effortless for him now. He kissed my forehead before heading upstairs. "Love you, Gracie." Gracie, the name used to feel sweet. Now it sounded like a mask he wore to cover a truth he no longer cared to hide. As I listened to his footsteps disappear down the hall, I whispered quietly to myself, "She thinks she's clever, but she sent her message to the wrong woman." Because I wasn't broken, I was waking up, and they were about to learn that I wasn't the kind of wife you betray and walk away from untouched. I didn't need revenge, not in the way movies portray it. Anyway, I didn't want to throw things, scream down a hallway, or beg for the truth. No, I wanted the truth to walk right into my hands, like a confession that didn't know it was being made. So I started collecting quiet proof. That Monday, I installed a discreet app on Daniel's old iPad, the one he hadn't touched in years. He'd left it linked to his phone, probably assuming I'd never bother checking. Within minutes, his messages began syncing to the cloud, and that's when the facade started to crumble. The things he wrote to Ava made my stomach turn. "You make me feel alive again. She's comfortable. But you're fire. Last night was a dream. I wish I could wake up next to you every morning." Comfortable. That was the word he used to describe me. Like a pair of old shoes. Like a couch he'd outgrown. But Ava wasn't just fire. She was careless. 2 days later, I received another message from her, this time without any disguise. "Ava Monroe, enjoy your client dinner tonight. I'll be the dessert." The nerve, the smugness, the assumption that I'd just roll over and disappear. I didn't respond. I didn't block her. I wanted her to keep messaging. The more she bragged, the more information I gathered. That night, Daniel came home late. His tie was loose, and he smelled like hotel soap. I asked him how the client dinner went. He hesitated just long enough to confirm what I already knew. "Oh good," he said. "Long night. They're out of..." Very talkative couple. He smiled as he said it. That same smile I fell in love with years ago. Only now, it looked like a stranger wearing my husband's skin, so I smiled back and kissed him on the cheek. Then I whispered, "I bet they were exhausting." The next morning, while he showered, I opened his briefcase and found a receipt. Tucked in the front pocket, the Grand Heston Hotel. Room 1823. Dated last night. He hadn't even bothered to hide it. I took a photo of it, added it to the growing folder I'd named Vacation Photos, a digital archive of betrayal. Layered in silence. But I wasn't done. I reached out to my cousin Rachel, a corporate lawyer who owed me a favor. "Let's say," I told her, "a woman wanted to quietly document infidelity, but not confront it just yet. What would be the best legal way to do it?" Rachel paused. "Grace, what's going on?" I answered simply, "I'm giving someone just enough rope." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Then make sure you know exactly how long you want the drop to be." I hung up and looked out the window, watching Daniel mow the lawn like nothing was wrong. Like we were still us. He had no idea that the storm he thought he'd outrun was living right under his roof. And that storm. It wasn't loud, it didn't rage, it planned, it watched, it waited. I gave Ava exactly what she wanted, and in return, she gave me everything I needed. Arrogance, carelessness, and a digital trail of receipts she never dreamed I'd find. The first was an Instagram story posted at 2:13 p.m., a mirror selfie in a luxury bathroom. I recognized the wallpaper immediately. It was Daniel's office building. Her caption, "Lunch date vibes. He says I'm the only one who makes him feel seen." Then came the message. No pretense, no disguise, just 5 words. "When are you leaving him?" I stared at the screen, fingers trembling not with fear, but with fire. The audacity. She had no shame, no respect, and clearly no idea who she was dealing with. It wasn't enough for her to take what wasn't hers, she wanted me gone. She wanted me erased. I responded for the first time. "Grace Whittaker, when I'm finished collecting what's mine. And believe me, Ava... That includes receipts." She read it instantly. No reply. Just silence. Good. That night, I waited until Daniel fell asleep. I took his phone while he snored softly beside me, lips parted in the same innocent expression he wore on our honeymoon. I opened the messages to Ava. And then, I did something that felt both wrong and wildly right. I sent her a photo of the two of us, in bed, nothing inappropriate. Just him curled beside me, his arm draped over my waist, like I was still his safe place. Caption, "Don't worry, he gets plenty of rest at home." Delivered. Seen. Still no response. But the next morning, everything changed. Daniel came downstairs, rubbing his temples like a man with too many secrets and not enough memory. "There's something off about my phone," he muttered. Messages disappeared. Batteries draining fast. I smiled over my mug. Technology's funny that way. He nodded absently, then looked at me for the first time in weeks. "You okay?" I tilted my head, matching his gaze. Of course. Why wouldn't I be? His eyes searched my face, but I gave him nothing. No hint of war behind the calm. No tremor in my voice. Just the same grace he thought he'd left behind emotionally, after he left for work. I made my next move. I called Ava. She didn't pick up, so I left a message. Steady, quiet, sharp as a blade. Made of words. "You wanted a reaction. Here it is. If you want Daniel, take him. But no, this he comes with everything he's done, and everything he's lied about. And when I'm done, there won't be a version of him left that you'll want to keep." That was the day I stopped playing defense. I wasn't just gathering proof anymore. I was building the final act. Every detail. Every moment of betrayal carefully stored, organized, time-stamped. My plan wasn't messy. It wasn't emotional. It was surgical. I didn't want Daniel back. I wanted to leave him without giving him the satisfaction of watching me break. And I wanted Ava to realize too late that she'd stepped into a life she didn't understand, so I made the first official move. I met with a private attorney. Her name was Candace Rowe, and within 15 minutes of laying out my file of evidence, messages, photos, receipts, recordings, she looked up at me with a mixture of surprise and admiration. "You've done more homework than most clients do after 6 months of litigation," she said. "Honestly, you have enough to walk away with everything. The house, the assets, even spousal support." I nodded calm. I don't want his money. Candace leaned forward. Then what do you want? I looked her dead in the eye. I want to make sure the next woman who thinks she's smarter than the wife never makes the same mistake. We discussed timing, legal logistics, and one final piece, proof of misconduct at his workplace. Daniel worked for a high-profile real estate firm that prided itself on discretion and reputation. If Ava was involved in any business dealings with him, especially if she wasn't a client, things could get interesting. Candace gave me a list of items to collect: company receipts, non-disclosure agreements, and anything showing he used work resources for personal gain. And that's when I ran into my first real wall. I called Daniel's assistant under the guise of planning a surprise for his upcoming birthday. "Oh, he doesn't work here anymore," she said casually. "Didn't he tell you?" I froze. "What do you mean?" "He resigned 2 weeks ago. Said he was starting his own firm with a partner." A partner? I didn't need to ask who. The puzzle pieces shifted violently in my mind. Daniel hadn't just betrayed me personally, he was trying to cut me out professionally too. If he opened a new firm with Ava, and the assets were moved or hidden before I filed, I could lose more than just dignity. I could lose everything. For the first time in weeks, I felt it panic, the kind that grabs you by the throat and whispers, "You're already too late." I ended the call, my hands trembling. He knew I'd find out. He was cleaning up faster than I expected. I went to his office that afternoon. The desk was empty. Files gone. Cabinets cleared. Only one drawer had been missed, maybe in a rush. Inside it, a crumpled printout of a business license application. Monroe and Whitaker Realty Group. I stared at the page until my eyes blurred. He didn't just give her my husband. He gave her my name. That was the moment the pain turned to fury. They wanted to start a new life together. Fine, but not with mine. I sat in the parking lot, gripping the business license, my name inked beside hers, like it had always belonged there. Monroe and Whitaker Realty Group. The woman who'd sent me smug messages in the middle of the night was now trying to wear my name like a brand, and Daniel he'd handed it to her. No wonder he'd been so careful. This wasn't just an affair. It was a full-blown replacement strategy. The new woman, the new business, the same last name. But you can't erase a woman, like me. Not without consequences. That night, I didn't go home. I drove straight to Maya's place, my best friend, my anchor. I hadn't told her everything yet, but the second she saw my face, she knew something had shattered. "I need your help," I said, voice shaking. "I think she's trying to become me." Maya didn't ask for proof. She just opened the door wider. "Tell me everything." I told her about the license, about the name, about the way Ava had gone from mistress to partner legally, financially, socially. It wasn't just about Daniel anymore. It was about identity theft of the heart. And Ava was playing a much longer, darker game than I realized. "She's not just in love with him," Maya whispered. "She's obsessed with you." That's when it clicked. Every message Ava had sent me mocking photos. Every dig at my marriage, it wasn't just taunting, it was imitation. She wasn't trying to destroy me out of hate. She was trying to replace me out of admiration, twisted into obsession. She wanted my life, my husband, my house, my name, and now, my future. So I did what any woman with nothing left to lose would do. I stopped playing nice. I sent Ava a message at midnight. "No games, no masks. You've made your move. Now it's my turn. Be ready." Then I sent a copy of the business license to Candace, along with screenshots of Ava using my name on client forms and email signatures. It wasn't just betrayal, it was unauthorized use of my personal identity for financial gain. Candace replied within minutes. "This changes everything. If she used your name to secure business deals, she's in violation of multiple legal codes. We're talking civil liability, even criminal charges." I finally exhaled. They'd tried to make me a ghost in my own life. But I was no ghost. I was the storm they invited in, thinking it was just rain. But the moment I made my first move, they scattered like smoke. 2 days after Candace began drafting the legal action against Ava for identity fraud, Daniel went off the grid. His phone rang once, then straight to voicemail. No texts, no emails. His office was empty. His assistant had been let go. And the address listed on the business license. Fake. They vanished. The same man I'd loved for 10 years was now a ghost, one who took my name, my trust, and a mistress turned con artist with him. I didn't panic. I doubled down. I filed the official paperwork through Candace. launching both an identity theft claim and a restraining order against Ava. The legal world moved slowly, but one was methodical. Each step brought me closer to reclaiming what was mine. But then came the blow I didn't see coming. My client, the Kensington estate, one of my biggest projects of the year, called to inform me that they were terminating my contract. Grace, the coordinator said softly, we've decided to go with another firm. The new agency came highly recommended, by your husband. I couldn't breathe. Excuse me, Daniel Whitaker told us you were stepping away for personal reasons. And he introduced us to someone who could take over seamlessly of a Monroe. It felt like my blood turned to ice. I checked my email. There it was, a message from the estate's PR firm, sent 3 days ago from Ava's address, signed Grace Whitaker. She'd forged my name, my signature, my business email. And they'd believed her. Candace was livid. This isn't just identity abuse, it's professional sabotage. You could sue them both for intentional interference and misrepresentation. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt violated. They weren't just running. They were rebuilding their empire using the blueprints of my life. And I was starting to lose more than just love. I was losing my career, my credibility, my name, the storm I'd become. It was being absorbed, redirected, by someone who had planned every move in advance. That night, I sat alone in my living room, surrounded by the silence of a home that once felt warm. Then a message lit up my phone. Unknown number. You always looked better on paper. Thanks for the blueprint. I dropped the phone. My heart raced. My hands shook. It wasn't just taunting anymore. It was war. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't know if I could win. Not anymore. I stared at that message. Thanks for the blueprint, and felt something inside me fracture. It wasn't just rage. It was something colder, deeper. The hollow kind of ache you get when someone doesn't just destroy your life. They rewrite it as if you never existed. They took my husband. They took my name. They took my clients. And now they wanted my silence. But if I had nothing left to lose, then I had nothing left to protect. The next morning, I walked into Candace's office with a new fire in my voice. We're done playing defense, I said. File the full claim. Make it public. Use my name, my real one. Candace leaned back. Are you sure? Once this goes into motion, the firm, the press, everyone will know you're coming for them. I don't want revenge, I said. I want the truth in headlines. She didn't blink. Then let's give them something to read. We filed everything: fraud, identity misrepresentation, defamation of business, intentional interference. I gave press permission to use my statements. I attached the screenshots, the messages, the forged signatures, everything Ava thought I'd keep hidden in fear. Within 24 hours, the story hit the local media. Interior designer accuses husband and mistress of using her identity in shocking business fraud scheme. I watched the headlines spread like wildfire. But that's when the real blow came. Late that night, Candace called. Her voice was quiet too quiet. Grace, there's a complication. My stomach dropped. What now? She registered a DBA doing business as Grace Whitaker Interiors weeks ago. You didn't have a trademark filed on the name. You never needed one. Until now. I froze. She's claiming you're the imposter. And she's pressing a counterclaim. Ava wasn't just stealing my life. She was erasing the legal existence of mine and writing a new version with herself as the original. It hit me like a freight train. All the silence, all the restraint, all the carefully laid plans. It hadn't been enough. She was always one step ahead. I sat in my office, lights off, staring at the nameplate on my desk. Grace Whitaker, founder. And for the first time since this all began, I whispered out loud, what if they win? That question echoed in the stillness, and for a split second, I felt it defeat. But then, somewhere deep beneath the exhaustion, a voice rose inside me, calm, steady, and unmistakably mine. Then I'll burn it down before I hand it to them. That was the moment I let go, not just of the business, the name, or the marriage. I let go of the need to prove anything to them. Because what Ava didn't understand was that when you strip a woman down to nothing, you don't destroy her, you set her free. So I did the unthinkable. I walked away from Grace Whitaker Interiors, the brand, the business, the clients, all of it. I signed the withdrawal documents, released the trademark dispute, and called Candace the next morning with 3 words. Let them have it. She was stunned. Grace, you have grounds to win this. If we push, I don't want what I built, with a man who was lying to me. I said quietly. If they want the skeleton of that life so badly, let them fight over the bones. Because I was done building palaces for people who lived like thieves. Instead, I started over from scratch. I applied for a brand new business license, a new LLC, a new identity. Not forged, not stolen - chosen. Whitaker was his name. I didn't want it anymore. I went back to the name I hadn't used since college. My grandmother's maiden name, the woman who raised me to believe that dignity wasn't something you begged for. It was something you carried. Grace Calder. I opened a studio in a smaller space on the edge of Charleston. Nothing fancy, just white walls, clean light, and enough room for my own thoughts. For the first time in months, the silence felt peaceful. I didn't announce it. I didn't blast it online. I didn't send Ava a message, or Daniel a warning. I just quietly created something they couldn't touch. Because they didn't know it existed. And I began rebuilding, not just a business, but myself. I started taking on new clients, smaller projects, people who didn't know my story, didn't ask about headlines, didn't care about the name on my door. They just wanted a space that felt like home. Funny, I finally understood that was all I wanted to. One night, while sorting through invoices in my new office, I got a text from Maya. "You're not gonna believe this." She sent a screenshot an article. Monroe and Whitaker Realty Group under investigation for forgery, breach of contract, and ethics violations. Apparently, Ava had pushed to far-sign deals under names she couldn't legally use, taken money from clients for properties that didn't exist. Daniel had been named in the inquiry. I stared at the screen for a long time. No anger, no satisfaction, just clarity. They weren't building an empire. They were building a house of mirrors. And all I had to do was walk away and let it collapse. All I had to do was walk away and let it collapse. And I did. I thought that was the end of it. I thought the chapter was closed. I was healing. Building something real, quiet, mine. But the thing about fire is it always leaves behind smoke. And sometimes, smoke finds its way back to you. It was a Thursday afternoon when I heard the knock. 3 short taps on the studio door. I expected a client, maybe a delivery. It was Daniel, hair disheveled, jacket wrinkled. The tie was gone. The confident smirk he wore like armor. Gone too. He looked like a man who had finally seen the ruins of his own making. "Grace," he said, almost in a whisper, "can we talk?" I stared at him, stunned, not because he showed up, but because part of me felt nothing. No fire. No hate. No longing. Just the dull realization that the man in front of me was a stranger wearing the memory of my husband. I stepped aside without a word. He entered slowly, eyes scanning the space I'd built without him. My name, Grace Calder, printed in bold on the welcome sign. He didn't sit. He just stood there, unraveling. "She's gone," he said, finally. I blinked. "Ava," he nodded, swallowing hard. "Took the money, left the business, cleared out her accounts." I didn't see it coming. I almost laughed. "Almost, oh," I said softly, "so she betrayed the betrayer. How poetic." He looked wounded, as if he had been the one left behind. "She was never you," he said. "Not even close." I met his eyes. "You didn't want me, Daniel. You wanted what you thought I couldn't become. And when she pretended to be that version, you handed her my life." "I made a mistake," he said. "A huge one." "No," I said, stepping closer. "You made choices. Over and over again." He fell silent. "I didn't come here to win you back," he added after a long pause. I needed to say it. "I'm sorry. For everything." And in that moment, I realized something powerful. I'd been waiting not for his apology, but for the freedom of knowing I no longer needed it. I smiled. "I forgive you," I said. "But I don't want you back." His shoulders dropped. "I know," he whispered. I walked him to the door. He turned once more, as if hoping I'd change. My mind, I didn't, because he had been my home once, but now, I was my own home. And for the first time in my life, I understood what that truly meant. It wasn't about rebuilding walls or redecorating a space. It was about never letting someone else hold the blueprint to your worth again. The day after Daniel left my studio for good this time, I walked to the waterfront alone. The Charleston breeze was warm, and the scent of the sea reminded me of when I first moved here, full of hope and possibility. I was 23 then, wide-eyed, willing to follow love anywhere. Now I was 35, and love would have to follow me. I sat on a bench by the water, scrolling through the photos on my phone. Not the old ones, not of him, not of her, just the recent ones. Paint samples, Mood boards. A little girl smiling inside her freshly painted bedroom, my client's daughter. A note from a woman I'd helped redo her bakery's interior. You didn't just fix my space, you gave me confidence again. Funny, that's what I'd been searching for all along, not revenge. Not a clean ending, but self-respect quietly stitched back together through honest work and peace. I received an email while I sat there. A new opportunity. A local magazine wanted to feature my studio in their fall issue, Women Who Rebuilt Themselves. I didn't cry, I just smiled. Not because I'd won. Not because Ava had disappeared, or Daniel had come crawling back, or because the legal mess was perfectly tied with a bow. No. I smiled because I had finally stopped waiting for closure from other people. I had written my own. I didn't need to be Grace Whittaker, the wife. I didn't need to be Grace Whittaker, the betrayed. I was Grace Calder, the woman who walked through fire and didn't come out burned, but branded not with their names, with my strength. That's what I had left when they took everything else. Not rage, not pride, just the kind of strength that lives in the quiet aftermath of destruction. And I wasn't afraid of silence anymore. It's strange how loss sharpens your senses. You start to see clearly who stood by you, who looked away, and who only loved you when you were easy to love. Daniel, he loved the polished version of me, the curated wife. The woman who stayed soft so he could stay powerful. Ava, she didn't want my life. She wanted the image of it. The carefully lit snapshots, the effortless grace, the way my name seemed to open doors. She never realized it wasn't the name that had value. It was the woman behind it. I've stopped tracking her now. I no longer Google their business. I no longer ask Candace for updates. The legal case will play out as it must. I've handed over the evidence. The truth is in motion, but I'm done being collateral. I'm done being compared. Because this life I'm building now, it's not about proving I'm better than Ava or punishing Daniel for forgetting who I was. It's about remembering myself. Last weekend, I stood in front of a small crowd at the grand opening of my new studio, Calder & Co., a space for women-owned businesses to collaborate, create, and heal. As I cut the ribbon, someone in the crowd asked, "How did you find the courage to start over?" I looked out at the faces, some I knew, most I didn't, and I said the most honest thing I've ever said out loud. Because someone tried to replace me and I realized I hadn't even met the real me yet. The room went still. And then it broke into applause. But I didn't smile because of the clapping. I smiled because it was finally my moment. Not stolen. Not shared. Not survival, victory. So, if you're reading this, if you've been lied to, left behind, erased, or replaced, let me tell you something they don't want you to believe. You are not broken. You are becoming. And one day, the people who underestimated you will have to live in a world you built from the wreckage they left behind.